Congressional hearing with Attorney General Pam Bondi erupts into Epstein chaos. Let's check it out. Welcome to Rob Schmitt Tonight. At a critical moment for the Epstein files, today Attorney General Pam Bondi went before the House Judiciary Committee and the hearing erupted.
Witnesses interrupted. In the gutter with this woman. She's doing theatrics.
And I told you about that, Attorney General, before you started.
You don't tell me.
Yeah, I did tell you because we saw what you did in the Senate.
Lawyer, not even a lawyer.
I believe you just lied under oath.
Don't you ever accuse me of a crime.
I believe you.
This guy has Trump derangement syndrome.
I just want to be clear.
So you want to go there, Attorney General?
There is so much fury between Democrats and the Trump White House right now that this was expected, right? But we are also in the midst of a real opportunity to finally force the deep state that operates this country to finally give us transparency that we want. As the DOJ works to redact and release millions of pages of documents from the Epstein files after Congress passed a Transparency Act in November of last year. Earlier this week, members of Congress were told that they were welcome to come and review these files totally unredacted, that they can see them, the broader public cannot. Last night, we spoke to Congresswoman Lauren Boebert and Congressman Tim Burchett, two of the most MAGA-aligned members of Congress who say there is still a cover-up happening in the allegedly unredacted files made available only for them.
A lot of these unredacted files that we are able to view have missing items and are still further redacted. A lot of the images aren't there where they say they are, where a JPEG link is present, and we're being told by the DOJ that it just doesn't exist, even though the link is there.
Do you think that it all comes out now?
No, I don't think we'll ever know. I have my doubts.
So with that, we move on to today, right? That frustration and other mistakes made were voiced today by Congressman Thomas Massie, a congressman who has become an enemy of the Trump administration. You've watched this relationship fall apart. Today, Massie slammed Bondi's DOJ for releasing a list of the victims, broadcasting a list of the victims out to the masses, while at the same time redacting the names of a number of likely co-conspirators who he claims are indictable for sex crimes, very likely. Names like billionaire Leslie Wexner and a Saudi sultan as well. Massie says the cover-up of Epstein goes all the way back to Obama and claims that Pam Bondi's DOJ is fighting to continue it despite what was voted on late last year, this Transparency Act.
We're going to unredact them here. Les Wexner is in this. But he doesn't appear in this file until I forced you to release it, where he's listed as a co-conspirator, not to tax evasion, but to child sex trafficking.
Within 40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.
Red-handed? There was one redaction out
where
of
he's
over
listed as a co-conspirator.
And we invited you in.
Gentlemen,
This guy has Trump derangement syndrome. He needs to get, you're a failed politician.
Yeah.
An ugly moment there. The question is, though, why? Why is this all so difficult? Why does this need to be so hard? Why does this feel so bizarre? Some people believe that there is no conspiracy here and nothing is actually being covered up. But again, some of Trump's biggest supporters, Boebert, Mace, Burchett, Anna Paulina, they don't buy that. It's not a get Trump story any longer. This latest release proves that Trump was like one of the first people to call out Epstein and applauded the Palm Beach Police Department, called the police chief, and thanked them for investigating this pervert years before he was even first convicted of a sex crime. This was 20 years ago. It's hard to imagine that Donald Trump then started hanging out with him and chasing after little kids after making a call to the Palm Beach police chief. So then why is the DOJ redacting names and then quickly unredacting some of them after being publicly called out? Why is this so weird? Remember, these are the same people that told us that they were releasing it all, that they couldn't wait to release it all as they gloated about their incoming power during the transition. That was only a year ago. It is the most bizarre story that I think I've ever covered, and the bits and pieces that we're seeing indicate that what's being concealed is horrific. Emails about loving the torture video from Epstein to an unknown recipient, protected by a DOJ redaction. Why? A simple but potentially disturbing email says age 10 sent to Jeffrey Epstein. Redacted sender. Now, there could be a good reason for that. A lot of things could be 10 years old, but where does your mind go? An explanation is probably needed for a redaction like that. Why is that name covered up? What was the rest of the email about? An email redacting the name of both the sender and recipient, so both sides blacked out, claims there's 2 foreign girls buried near Epstein's ranch in New Mexico. 2 girls who were strangled during rough sex. And 2 massive barrels of sulfuric acid ordered to Epstein's island. We talked about this last night. 2 55-gallon drums of sulfuric acid, something so strong it could eat right through the floor of your house. 110 gallons of sulfuric acid to the island. As Lauren Berbert described last night, after combing through these files for hours on Tuesday, it's dark.
Seems that it wasn't only the trafficking of young girls. There are code words that suggest Jeffrey Epstein and his associates could maybe even be engaging in some sort of consumption. Is that human consumption? There's a lot of talk of beef jerky. There's a restaurant called The Cannibal where the owner is listed in some of these documents. I saw more emails about torture. Torture was big. It was a big driver for them.
That was a crazy interview. The obnoxious part of this moment comes, though, as we try to figure out what's going on here and we try to make sense of it. At the same time, the most obnoxious part of this is what we're hearing from Democrats, just as you would expect, who are displaying themselves as the virtuous, transparent political party that's fighting a regime of perverts blocking the release of these files. When in reality, as you very well know, the Democrat Party managed to whip its entire caucus into never asking once for the release of these files, all during Joe Biden's 4 years when Merrick Garland was in control of the DOJ. That's how much control they have of their caucus. These are whipped puppies. They're cattle. They follow whatever the hell the leader says. They never ever stray. They can't think for themselves. And they're frauds. They're phony. The biggest pedo protectors in this country have a D next to their name politically, and are gaslighting the country to the absolute max on Jeffrey Epstein and the files. Take a listen to their screams today after years of completely ignoring this story as the victims begged them to release these files.
Have not held a single man accountable. Shame on you. If you had any decency, you would resign.
For goodness sakes,
You're
this
from
is
a tiny,
pathetic. This
beautiful
is
state.
pathetic, Mr. Chair.
You're not answering the question. You do a Jekyll and Hyde kind of routine around here.
Convict some of these perpetrators that rape these women that are sitting behind you, that you refuse to even acknowledge they are here.
I'm talking.
If they're not privileged,
Quiet.
don't yell at me.
When Merrick Garland was head of the DOJ, they couldn't have cared less about this story. Frauds, every single one of them. And although Pam Bondi had a rough day today, she did level them on that point.
They are talking about Epstein today. This has been around since the Obama administration. This administration released over 3 million pages of documents, over 3 million. And Donald Trump signed that law to release all of those documents. He is the most transparent president in the nation's history. And none of them asked Merrick Garland over the last 4 years one word about Jeffrey Epstein. How ironic is that?
Congressman Thomas Massie joins us now, and sir, thanks for coming back on. I want to start with you viewed the unredacted files, as did our guests last night. What did you see just start there?
Well, I can tell you who sent the torture video because I'm the one that discovered it. They redacted the email And so what I did is I got that email and I put it back into the DOJ computer and searched the rest of the Epstein files for that email, was able to match it up with a man named Sultan bin Sulayman or something. And I forced the DOJ to admit to that on Monday. As far as the emails about the 10-year-olds or the 11-year-olds or whatever, I looked into that too. I found out it was a woman at a modeling agency, and they redacted it presumably because it was a woman, and they really redacted most of the women's names.
The belief there on the women is just real quick. They're redacting women under the idea, the premise that they might be victims themselves. But the allegation is now that some of these women were actually helping Epstein to find girls. Yeah. To find kids.
And that's probably the case. So, yeah. And then I found another document while I was over there where they had, this is an FBI document. It's not even a witness statement. The FBI prepared this document and they listed Leslie Wexner as a co-conspirator to child sex trafficking, not just sex trafficking, child sex trafficking. And that's a 2019 FBI document. Yeah. So I came out publicly and I said the DOJ needs to unredact this, and they did. Now, Bondi's rebuttal to that is, oh, Les Wexner appears thousands of times in the documents we released. Yes, that's true, Ms. Bondi, but here's the problem. This is the only instance where he appears as a co-conspirator in a child sex trafficking crime. And that's the one instance they didn't release.
I guess the question is...
I asked her today if she can...
Not to cut you off, but my question is why is the Department of Justice protecting Leslie Wexner? Why would they be protecting the Sultan Amayad or whatever his last name is? What would possibly be the motive for that? That they're taking so much political hits here. Again, something they promised they would release. They all talked about how they couldn't wait to dig into all this stuff and release it to the people. It was a populist Trump coming back into the White House. What is happening? Why?
Well, so I asked Pam Bondi, can you tell me the individual who made that redaction? And that might, Rob, help us to know who, if she's in control, and maybe there's somebody trying to make her look bad. Or maybe there's somebody at the DOJ who's a carryover who's trying to protect Les Wexner in these files. I don't know. I don't know their motives. But they could have done the same thing that I did, Rob, before they released these files. They could say, okay, we've got an FBI document here that's labeled child sex trafficking, co-conspirators. Maybe we should look through this and see if these are all legitimate redactions. Why did they have to wait for me to go find them?
Do you believe that okay, so we have a handful of names now. There was 6 that were redacted. You've managed to get them unredacted. There's millions of pages that have been released. Do you believe that there are far more names than this? Do you believe there's a few more names than this? Do you believe that the 6 on the screen are the extent of what was redacted and are attempted to be protected by somebody inside DOJ?
I believe there are at least a couple dozen names contained in the FBI 302 forms. These are the forms that the FBI fills out when they take statements from witnesses and victims. And so by talking to the victims' lawyers, I know that they've submitted names to the FBI. And the FBI, they put documents up on the website that if I could have searched them, I could have found those names. But before I was able to go over to the DOJ to search the unredacted documents, they pulled those down, those FD 302 forms that would have had those names.
So you believe there's a couple dozen names that are still in these files somewhere? I mean, we're very close to getting this transparency that we so desire. Do you think we get there? Do you think that we finally push through this and we get all the way through it and it all comes out?
Well, listen, Rob, when I co-wrote this legislation with Ro Khanna, we knew this was going to be a problem. So we put in the legislation that the DOJ has to release internal communications, emails, notes about decisions on whether to prosecute or not. So they need to give us the rest of what they're compelled by our legislation to give us, which would be the decisions about whether to prosecute Les Wexner or not. And when they do that, then I do think we can get to the bottom of it.
Congressman Thomas Massie, I can tell you're sick. You're playing hurt. I appreciate you coming on and talking to us, though. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. I'll come back on when my voice comes with me.
I got you. All right. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. All right. We're going to continue to follow this story, of course. Up next, the SAVE Act, requiring proof of citizenship to vote, has just passed the House moments ago. We've got the Speaker, Mike Johnson, up next.
Charlie was the best of America, and the monster who attacked him was attacking our whole country.
Before Charlie Kirk died, he issued a stark warning of terrifying dangers ahead in a new book, Pagan Threat, authored by Pastor Lucas Miles. Charlie said Pagan Threat could save America and that you must read it. Get Pagan Threat free with Newsmax's special offer. Plus, get Dick Morse's new book, The Real Charlie Kirk. 2 great books with our free offer today.
With less pain and swelling from active psoriatic arthritis, imagine being a million miles away. With Tremfya, less joint pain, stiffness, and swelling is possible. Some patients even felt less fatigued. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Imagine being a million miles away. Ask your doctor about Tremfya.
I lost 110 pounds. You couldn't tell at all because of my excess skin. Sono Bello changed that in one visit.
Introducing the new Lift EX, the just one visit, total body transformation everyone is talking about.
I am super happy with my results.
I decided to give Sono Bello a try. Look at me, I have a silhouette. You can see my waist.
Lift EX is Sono Bello's breakthrough 360-degree body lift alternative. Our body contouring experts sculpt, tighten, and lift your stomach, waist, thighs, and backside, all in just one visit with less downtime.
Sono Bello targeted the areas diet and exercise could not do. I found me again.
Sono Bello has over 50,000 5-star reviews, and Lift EX is exclusively available at Sono Bello, America's #1 cosmetic surgery specialist. Book your free, personalized consultation today. Easy monthly plans make your best body more affordable than ever.
This year is my year thanks to Sono Bello.
Call Sono Bello for your free consultation today.
Doctors' Preferred Liver Defense is doctor developed to support your natural detox function with clinically validated, triple-tested key ingredients to energize and renew your liver. Find Liver Defense in the supplement aisle at Walmart. Doctors Preferred. Better science, better results.
This is about a 90-10 issue in the polling, because all that we've done tonight in this simple piece of legislation is apply common sense.
Common sense, once again. We've talked a lot about the SAVE Act on this show. We've watched Democrats go ballistic over the idea of securing our elections, demanding proof of citizenship and ID, despite something like 80 to 90% of Americans saying, yeah, that makes sense. We should be doing that. The SAVE Act passed the House just a little bit ago. Democrat Henry Cuellar voting with Republicans to pass it, 218 to 213, the final number. Again, mandating just common sense. Voter ID, we need to know you're a citizen of this country if you're going to vote in our elections. It now heads to the Senate, where the filibuster stands in its way, and the House Speaker Mike Johnson joins us tonight. Mr. Speaker, it's good to have you on. I want to start with your reaction to the passage of the bill and the fact that you got a border state Democrat to vote with you, which I think that part of it is very interesting.
It is interesting. Thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me. And it does make it a bipartisan piece of legislation, and it's long overdue. And I want to thank you for putting so much attention on it over this long period of time. This is common sense legislation, as you and I have both said this evening and have been saying forever. The idea that you would have to have proof of citizenship and just simply show a photo ID to vote is something that almost every American agrees with. The polling says even 70% of Democrats agree with that as common sense. And yet, we were only able to attract one Democrat vote tonight in the House. Now, we got it through the House. We're sending it to the Senate. And we're very hopeful that a handful of Democrats over there will come to their senses and do the right thing, because I don't know how in the world they can explain to the people back home that they're opposing this.
They're not going to come to their senses and do the right thing. They're all going to vote against it, and they're going to pray that they don't change the rules and either do this, I guess, standing filibuster or just kill it entirely to get it through. I mean, they talk about this. They call it Jim Crow to ask for identification to vote. I mean, the rhetoric, I think, indicates just how terrified they are of the passage of this. My question to you is, Why are they so scared?
Well, look, I think the conclusion is obvious. Anybody who opposes this clearly wants an opportunity to cheat the system. They want non-Americans to vote in our elections. And you and I and others have opined on this for quite some time. Why in the world would the Biden-Harris administration open the border wide for 4 years and allow all these illegals, as many as 20 million illegals, to come into the country? It was a means to an end. The end is their own power. They wanted to have illegals vote in the elections to throw them in the places that they could. I mean, I don't know how we can draw any other conclusion, and the votes are proving that. So we are very hopeful that we can get this to the president's desk. I can tell you, I was with him 90 minutes ago in the Oval Office, and he is very anxious to sign this into law because the president knows that we have to maintain the integrity of American elections, and it's an essential component of maintaining a constitutional republic.
Is the president putting enough pressure on Leader Thune to actually get this through? It's not going to be voted. It's not going to get 60. We know that. So is there enough pressure to actually get it done? Is Thune willing to change this rule in a way that'll allow for a simple majority to pass something that I think is so critically important if you want people to believe in our elections, if you want to be like the rest of the modern first world and have a secure election, this is needed.
You're right. About 70 countries require photo ID to vote. Why would the greatest country in the history of the world not do this? It makes no sense. Look, I think Leader John Thune is as committed to this as I am and you are, and he's trying to figure out the combination of votes and procedures to get it through and get it to the president's desk. And he's committed. He's going to bring it to the floor. They're talking about different versions of the filibuster that might accomplish that mission, and we believe that desperate times call for desperate measures. So we have a custom. I don't tell him how to run the Senate. He doesn't tell me how to run the House, but I think he is doing the work and trying to get this done.
Do you think he's worried about some kind of a backlash? When he talks about it, he seems worried that this will, that it'll waste a tremendous amount of time, or that something negative will come from it. You can hear it in his voice. What do you think that concern is?
Well, yeah. Well, he's a student of the institution. He knows the rules well and how they can be abused by the other side. And there is a concern that if you open that up, it could go for weeks and weeks on end, and that it would have an unendable amendment process with no germaneness hurdles to it. And that just means basically that Democrats could potentially throw anything they want on it. But look, we have to see how that plays out. He's got to strategize that with the Senate Republicans. And I can tell you, I mean, our Senate Republican colleagues believe as firmly in this principle as we do. And we're hopeful, we're confident they can get something done over there.
I want to ask you about the Seditious Six, as they have been labeled. A failure today to get an indictment for these Democrats who put out the video telling our troops essentially that they should not act on orders that they don't believe to be legal. And I think that really meant that, like, orders that Mark Kelly doesn't believe to be legal. Dancing a very fine line on sedition in this country, but a D.C. jury pool, not too surprising, I guess, could not indict for this. How big of a mistake was that to maybe try it in Washington, D.C. in that jury pool?
Well, it's a very important question that we all should be asking ourselves. And I don't think they've released publicly the indictment, the materials, and the documents yet. And I'm a lawyer. I used to litigate. Ironically, I used to litigate constitutional law cases to protect free speech, and we do believe in that as a core principle. But this, to me, crossed the line. You have high-ranking officials in the federal government, many of whom, all the ones, the Seditious Six, as they're called, were former military officers and commanders, and they are effectively telling young soldiers, young troops, young people in the military not to obey orders. It's a dangerous and serious situation, and I think they need to hold themselves to a higher standard. Was it criminal? I don't know. That's what our system is for to determine, but I can tell you that it crossed the line, and they should be called out for it.
Yeah. Netanyahu at the White House earlier, Iran clearly in focus again. There was reporting from Zero Hedge that actually gets a lot of good inside stuff, saying that at least 112 C-17s have now headed to the Middle East to go on, in addition to the armada that is in the region as well. They called it Desert Storm levels of military might in the Middle East. Is there any indication we're about to do something in Iran?
Well, I don't know that that's a direct indication of that, and I frankly have not been to the SCIF to get the inside info, and so I don't want to opine on it too much, but I will tell you this. What it is a strong show of force by a strong commander-in-chief who believes in the principle of peace through strength, and he has demonstrated that over and over, and the demonstration of that is what has led to the resolution of 8 wars around the globe so far, 8 and counting. And Iran is playing with fire. If they have any nuclear aspiration, it must be stopped. And I think everybody in the free world understands the necessity of that, and showing a strong hand there hopefully has the desired effect.
Final question. Are you satisfied with the level of transparency from the DOJ regarding the Epstein files, which your House passed that bill back in November for transparency? Are you satisfied?
Well, I haven't seen all the testimony today. I've been busy trying to manage the House here. But in general, I would say the DOJ is releasing the information. It's over 3.5 pages. There's videos, there's photographs, all of that. They're getting it out. Yeah, and they're allowing the members of Congress to come in and see the unredacted versions. I mean, that, to me, looks like full transparency. I think they're trying their best to comply with those subpoenas while also protecting as the best they can these innocent victims. We don't want them to be victimized a second time, and that is an important concern. Now, there may be some errors in 3.5 million pages, but that's why they're allowing members to go in and check it out. And I trust my colleagues all here to go in and do that, do the reading, do the homework, and make sure that we expose anyone who is in any way involved in these crimes, but we protect the innocent women that were victimized in the whole process.
Okay. All right. The House Speaker, Mike Johnson, we appreciate you, sir, coming on. Good to see you.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it. Good to see you.
Politicians can't wait to legalize weed and tax it, and the damage that this greed has done to our kids and to our society is becoming very evident. That is up next.
If you don't change that, I'm going to Mrs. Reagan and I'm resigning.
The Reagans, the Bushes, and the Clintons. White House usher Chris Emery saw it all. Discover the secret lives of the first families. Watch White House Usher, the inside story.
Get the life back. Okay, we're good. He's breathing. Okay.
When I saw that Ethan was not breathing, I determined that I needed to use something to remove the obstruction from his airway.
It's very important for every household to have a life vest.
Everyone should have one in their home. Anything can happen at any moment.
I want my friends and family and people that I serve to know that we have this device to potentially save lives.
Protect your family. Go to lifevac.net.
Go to lifevac.net or call 877-543-3822.
Balance of Nature is a wonderful product. Whether you're a teenager or whether you're older, you don't have to be in your 70s to take the product. I recommend it to all of my friends. I'm very grateful that I started on Balance of Nature.
Start your journey with Balance of Nature supplements today. Go to balanceofnature.com and subscribe and save with free shipping and our money-back guarantee. That's 1-800-246-8751. Don't wait. Now's the time to take action.
Ready for relief? I just want relief.
I needed relief.
You just want relief. Like you just want it to go away.
You need the Signal Relief Patch.
We all hurt, whether it's our neck, back, knees, or shoulders. Pain keeps you from doing the things that matter most. In a recent study, 85% of people felt relief.
As a surgeon, I put it on, and I can't explain why it works. I can just tell you, it does work.
Some people think this is just in my head, but I know that it works. It's working.
The Signal Relief Patch for me offered up independence.
The Signal Relief Patch for me actually means pain relief.
With a Signal Patch, I've been able to sleep, walk, and work.
Relief. That's what the Signal Patch gave me.
It was phenomenal. Why aren't more people trying this?
Join the thousands who have experienced relief, and it comes with a money-back guarantee. Get your patch today.
You can join the Tunnel to Towers mission to do good by donating your car to today's veterans. Your car donation will help Gold Star families, as well as injured veterans, our first responders, and our homeless veterans. Donating your car is quick and simple. Any car is accepted, and we will pick up the car for free. Simply call 844-BRAVES.
By donating your car, you can make a real difference. You can do good.
Whoa, 90% off? I have to purchase now.
My phone!
That was a scam link.
Try this one. We installed PCmatic.
PCmatic blocks ransomware before threats can strike.
It's 100% made in America security.
Trusted by homes, businesses, governments, and now you. Stop guessing.
Start blocking.
Get PCmatic.
Whether it's care before or after school, or a sitter for date night, you don't have to hire just anyone. You can find a background-checked caregiver who's the right fit for you. Join now and find care at care.com.
Welcome back. Politicians couldn't wait to legalize weed so that they could tax it and spend the revenue, as we know. Just a reminder of how little they actually care about you and what's best for you. The New York Times, of all places, now admitting that America has a marijuana problem, something that a lot of us have thought for a very long time. New survey shows 18 million people in this country are essentially smoking pot every single day, 21 times a month or more. That means every day. Pot is a lot stronger than it was 50 years ago in this country. That's another thing we have to really understand. And we have people ending up in the hospital for marijuana-linked paranoia, chronic psychotic disorders. It's like a hallucinogen. It's not just like, oh, I feel good, I'm mellow, let's listen to some music. Now it's like you feel like you're in a psych ward when you get high. 13 years ago, the experts told us that legalizing weed would bring very few downsides. Remember all that? That it was harmless, that it would have health benefits. Today, it seems we're learning that the experts, once again, especially in the health realm, were totally wrong. We have potheads everywhere living life in a haze of a drug, and our kids is where you really see it. Kids are smoking pot all the time, and they're smoking very powerful stuff. In December, the president signed an executive order to reschedule pot as a class 3, I believe, instead of class 1, making it a lesser illegal drug for the benefits of medical use. Maybe that was a mistake. Jillian Michaels is here with us on the set. She's the host of the Keeping It Real podcast. Katie Zacharia also with us, legal and political strategist. Ladies, good to have you both here. Jillian, starting with you.
Yeah.
What have we created here? A monster?
Well, we legalized it right under the pretense of tax dollars. I firmly believe that. But what you've seen in California, for example, everything smells like weed. Everywhere you go, the streets smell like weed. It's been normalized, so more people are doing it, and it's like less people are drinking. Well, because they're all smoking weed.
Yeah.
And it was sold to you as this health panacea. Oh, it helps with pain. Oh, it helps with mood. If it's medicine, then it should be prescribed by a doctor. You shouldn't be able to buy it at a store in some alley and self-medicate. And kids are doing it. And in particular, we know it's exceptionally detrimental to a developing brain.
To a developing brain. Katie, you have a very personal story about how this has affected your family. I wanted to hear that.
Yes, everything yes to what Jillian Michaels said. I live in California. I've seen this front and center. Grew up in the marijuana capital of California, south of Big Sur. And each one of my siblings who started smoking marijuana under the pretenses that it would help with anxiety or their migraine headaches have become severely addicted to marijuana. As you noted, Rob, have had hospital stays, one of the 2.8 million for the cannabinoid hyperemesis, panic attacks, anxiety attacks, low productivity, and honestly on a brain scan, a very different brain scan from what would have been had they not started smoking marijuana in their prefrontal cortex. So it is devastating. I cannot speak out enough against this. It should be prescribed, and it is absolutely decimating an entire generation of productive people that could be on the street, could be out of the streets and in industry working.
Yeah, and that's the, I mean, if the New York Times is coming out against it, ladies, then there's obviously a problem. And again, for kids, I mean, this is, it can make you crazy. It certainly robs you of your go get them in your life. It takes that all away from you. It turns you just into a pod.
I mean, we have the testosterone problem in young men.
Yeah.
This is absolutely going to contribute to it. It's exceptionally detrimental. We could spend an hour talking about all the negative things that it does to your health.
Yeah, it's scary stuff. I got to leave it there, but it's an interesting conversation because it was such a crucial mistake that was made, and we make a lot of these mistakes in the health realm, as you certainly know, Jillian. Yeah, it's good to see you. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Katie, good to see you too. All right, coming up here, another trans mass shooting. This one in Canada leaves 6 kids dead. How long are we going to pretend that these people are not mentally ill? What's up next?
I'm John Glasgow, and whether the story is right here in New York City in a courthouse or at the border wall in Arizona, we're going to be boots on the ground to bring you all the facts to make sure that you get the story straight, because that's what's important to us right here at Newsmax.
Don't kibble your dog.
Oh, hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, Bat.
But what's wrong with this? It's premium stuff.
Let's check it out. It's still kibble. which means it's ultra-processed at extremely high temperatures that destroy the nutrients in the food. But at Dr. Marty, we gently freeze-dried premium meats, fruits, and vegetables, locking in their nutrients.
Never kibbled.
You got it, kid, and they're gonna love it.
Total Beets, America's best-selling Beets brand, is available at Walmart. Total Beets blood pressure support soft chews contain a key ingredient clinically shown to deliver 2 times better blood pressure support. Take control of your health. Head to Walmart and get Total Beets blood pressure support soft chews today.
Your data is like a single domino. The moment it's stolen, it starts a chain reaction that puts the information that guards your assets at risk. 1 in 3 Americans have been a victim of identity theft. Are you willing to risk it?
When I saw zeros on that screen as my bank account balance, I went to immediate panic.
$21,000 just gone.
I opened my account and $30,000 is missing. Like $30,000. I have no idea what to do.
If your personal information is stolen, are you prepared to pick up the pieces alone? LifeLock is the leader in identity theft protection and restoration.
Once LifeLock got involved, everything changed.
With LifeLock, if your identity is stolen, they'll step in and fix it so you don't have to, guaranteed. Our highly trained U.S.-based restoration specialists contact institutions, dispute fraudulent charges, close compromised accounts, and even procure legal support far beyond the capabilities of your bank or credit card company.
LifeLock pursued this case further than I ever would have imagined.
If you call right now, you'll get LifeLock for just $9.99 a month for your first year. And as extra protection, all LifeLock memberships include the $1 Million Protection Package. Our members receive reimbursement for stolen funds and personal expenses, like lost wages, as well as coverage for lawyers and experts up to $3 million in total.
When the bank refused to reimburse my stolen money, the $1 Million Protection Package came through for me.
Our restoration guarantee and $1 Million Protection Package are included in all memberships with no additional fees.
I think it's natural to think that you can do this on your own. You can't. You need an expert in your corner.
Call 1-800-360-9220 and use promo code TV35 or go to lifelock.com/TV35 to join today.
Hello, everyone. It's President Donald J. Trump, and it's Trump time. Check out this red beauty. It's one of my new watches. Wear it proudly on your wrist, and everyone will know exactly what it's for, who it represents. It's really going to be something special. It's for your favorite president. Get your watch today at gettrumpwatches.com. Please make a great gift. It's Trump time.
Breaking news out of the Canadian province of British Columbia.
At least 9 people have been killed and dozens more injured in shootings at a high school and a home.
Police say the shooter killed 9 people and then themselves.
Tumbler Ridge, Canada, mountain town about 2,400 in the Northern Rockies, devastated tonight by the latest mass shooting. 9 dead, dozens wounded, 6 kids killed inside Tumbler Ridge Secondary School. The school that only has about 160 students, so everybody knows probably everybody killed. Police say most of the victims were 12 or 13 years old, found in the library. The shooter's mother and stepbrother also found shot and killed at their home, along with the shooter, who's dead, identified as 18-year-old Jesse Van Rootselaar, also known as Jesse Strange. Former student and a dropout, the shooter's uncle, the first to reach out to Juno News outlet, confirming that his now deceased nephew was transgender, born a boy, pretending to be a girl. Of course, the media reporting that that the shooter is a woman, pandering to the mental disease, pandering to the trans community, rather than forcing the uncomfortable discussion that we all need to have about a very, very small group of people in our society who clearly have a big problem with mental illness, and we're seeing this lash out time and time again. Ezra Levant is the Canadian-based founder of Rebel News. He's with us now. Jamiee Michell is the founder of Gays Against Groomers, and it's good to have you both here. Ezra, it's your country. The shooter is trans on SSRIs with cross-sex hormones. How many times are we going to have to see this story?
Well, most people in Canada won't see the story because the media is not disclosing that the shooter is transgender. The very first indication of this was the police saying it is a gun person a gun person, and describing it in an emergency broadcast as a woman, a female wearing a dress, which is a very strange way to describe. So they literally texted that to every cell phone in the town, warning, be aware for a female in a dress. That's literally the opposite of who the killer was. And even to this day, one journalist said, why are you continuing to say she and female? And the RCMP, the Mountie, said, well, because that's what he would have done, or that's what she would have wanted. It's so weird. And I got to say, Rob, if they're hiding this most elemental fact, what else are they not telling us? Is there a manifesto? Perhaps. I don't know, but I don't think we would ever be able to get that truth from these cops.
No.
There's a terrible tragedy, and we should recognize that there's people mourning, people grieving. But there's a layer of lies that the police and the regime media are putting on top of it.
Yeah, there was a manifesto in Nashville. We had a school shooting, and how long did it take before that finally leaked out? How long did they conceal that? Jamiee, Andy Ngo has done a ton of reporting on trans radicalization. He reacted with this. There's a trans mass killer every few months now, and he's right. And this is just a list here. There's a furry fetish story here, or radical transgender ideology. So many recent shooters have been trans or subscribed to this ideology. A lot of them target kids. The Minnesota Catholic school, you got loners that are being radicalized. It appears that we are going to continue to avoid having a conversation that we need to have about mental illness, because it seems like it's easier to let kids get killed than it is to be considered transphobic.
Yeah, that's basically the gist of it. It's a terrifying trend. It's a horrific tragedy what happened, and it's just another one in a long list of these kinds of situations where we see mentally disturbed or mentally ill young people. Instead of being treated for their mental illness, they're put on cross-sex hormones and told that they're a different gender, which is not possible. It's just, it's a lie. It's not smart, and it's not kind. It's not a kind thing to lie to children, to lie to young people, or to lie to anybody. But, I saw reports that this person, this man, this 18-year-old kid now, who was the shooter, who identified as trans, they started transitioning as young as 12. Gays Against Groomers, we saw this post from the mother, who was also shot dead by this trans-identified boy. She was a trans rights activist herself, and it led to, she posted on her Instagram about protect trans kids, and how, this bullying trans people or not accepting trans people leads to so many deaths. And I don't, she meant it in the way that these trans-identified people take their lives, but really, and now she's gone as well. It's an epidemic. We have to start telling the truth about it. And I'm grateful for platforms like X, where, now you can't hide it as well. You can try, but the truth is still getting out.
Open and honest information, at least in one platform that is so widely used. And I guess I'll end with just the good news as we say goodbye, that here in the U.S., this first major medical group, American Society of Plastic Surgeons, coming out against trans surgeries for minors. They say there's not enough evidence that there's a benefit that outweighs the tremendous risks to this. So this is changing here in the United States. And finally, there's going to be accountability for the doctors out there. We're going to see lawsuits coming from all of these detransitioned people that are going to say, oh, you destroyed me, and now you're going to pay. And that should shift a lot of the doctors from engaging in this carnage against our children. I got to leave it there. Ezra, Jamiee, thank you both so much. Good to see you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Axios at the peak of anti-Trump desperation. A classic headline they quickly had to delete. Up next in News from the Left.
Oh no! Our water line broke. It could cost a fortune to get a contractor to come fix it, and it's not covered by homeowners insurance.
That's why you should have HomeServe.
It's Tom Merson, CEO of HomeServe.
When your water line breaks, HomeServe sends a qualified contractor to fix it and pays for the covered repairs.
With HomeServe, the American dream of owning a home doesn't need to be a nightmare.
Plans from HomeServe start at just $4.99 a month.
Call 1-833-559-6598 or visit homeserve.com.
When it fits you. When it thrills you. When it connects and protects. This is 140 years of Mercedes-Benz innovation. It's more than a feeling. It's a bond. Experience everything a Mercedes-Benz SUV has to offer today.
Take it in, but don't look down. 'Cause I'm on top of the world. I'm on top of the world. I've been waiting to smile. Been holding it in.
Champions trust Cosequin, the #1 vet recommended retail joint health supplement brand and official joint health supplement of the Westminster Dog Show.
Your Florida life is calling, and we have the answer. Valencia in Florida by GL Homes. Premium 55-plus living in 5 prime Florida locations. Gorgeous new homes from the mid-300s to $2.5 million. World-class resort-style living 24/7. Huge clubhouses, on-site dining, pickleball, and more. Effortless, low-maintenance living. Valencia, your Florida life is calling. Experience more at valenciaflorida.com.
Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin, President and CEO of Swiss America. Most investors believe their IRA, 401k, and bank accounts are reliable and safe. But what if our economy becomes so dire that you're restricted from accessing your own money? The fact is that should your bank be in trouble for holding bad loans, the burden could fall on you to help bail them out. Even more concerning is that U.S. financial regulations allow banks to impose withdrawal limits on your hard-earned savings. But there's something you can do about it. Our team at Swiss America has a report called The Secret War on Cash. Learn how to protect yourself with assets that can remain outside the control of banks and other financial institutions. For over 40 years, Swiss America has been one of the most trusted metal firms in the country. So don't wait. Call or text the number on your screen today for financial peace of mind in these uncertain times.
Welcome back. Time now for news from the left. Hilarious headline from Axios today. This really shows kind of the peak of anti-Trump desperation for a writer for this publication, a writer that had to find a way, try to find any way, to spin this country's dramatic decline in violent crime. Headline reading, crime plunges in major cities despite Trump's crackdown rhetoric. Despite? Despite? Their article is showing a chart highlighting the largest drops in homicide rates from 2024 to 2025. Look at all the major cities. Orlando, Tampa plummeting more than 50%. Denver just below 50%. Look at how many lives are being saved in this country simply by having an administration that says you're not allowed to just be a criminal. We're not going to pander to you any longer. D.C. down just 32%. One of the lower ones is Washington, D.C., which we're told is dramatically safer. People that walk around say they can't believe how much better it feels. Now, despite these numbers, the article goes on to say experts aren't sure why violent crime continues to fall. Axios. And just when you think it couldn't get any better, Axios ended up changing the headline. They had to delete the old one. They got way too much attention. Now saying violent crime plummets across major cities. Just a standard boring headline without a little political tinge to it. Axios posting an explanation on X as to why they did it. Okay. Next up, former MSNBC host Joy Reid with another real beauty. Take a listen.
I will say that at MSNBC, the artist formerly known as MSNBC, the one thing I will give them credit for is that because we were tied to NBC News, all the outrage was tied to journalism. We weren't allowed to just get up there and lie. We had a standards and practices department. So if we just had a feeling that Trump was a bad guy, we couldn't just get up there and say that.
Joy Reid was fired by MSNBC, first of all. She was fired by MSNBC, too, not MS Now. She was fired by MSNBC, and then NBC disbanded the MS. They got rid of the cable network because it was such a liability, so full of lies and nonsense and politically radical idiocy, that NBC said, even though we're making money off of you, we don't want to be attached to you anymore. When was the last time you saw a corporation dump a profitable part of its enterprise? You ever see that? And Joy Reid comes out and tells us that everything at MSNBC was so professional and so well done. Why'd you get canned, and why is it no longer called MSNBC, Joy? Answer those two questions for me, if you would. Next up, Jack Schlossberg, grandson of JFK. He thinks he's John. He's not. And now he's attacking his uncle, Robert F. Kennedy, our health secretary.
He's a dangerous person who's in charge of life and death decisions. And as ridiculous as some of the claims and entertaining that they might be, it's all fun when you're designing a new food pyramid. But when people are dying of measles, this is serious business. People are not getting vaccinated. They rescinded the recommendation to get a hepatitis B vaccine for newborns. Why?
Yeah, he doesn't have the star power of John or any of the Kennedys. He didn't get the right DNA for that. You're blaming the vaccines and not the 20 million illegal immigrants that were dumped into the country for the measles outbreak. Again, Jack, baby, this was proven just last week. ICE had to halt all movement at a detention facility for migrants in Texas because of a measles outbreak. That's why we have measles in the country. You can't sit there and be so neurotically crazy about vaccines and then let 20 million third world people into your country. You just can't do it. And secondly, the hepatitis B vaccine on newborns, yeah, that's a sexually transmitted disease. They don't need that right when they come out. Let's wait a few years on that one. It's called common sense, Jack. Look it up. Next up, we showed you some of the Pam Bondi hearing earlier today. We're going to show you one more clip when our Attorney General really hit a big nerve today with Jewish Congresswoman Becca Balint at the end of a tense back and forth, calling her out, a woman whose grandfather died in the Holocaust, apparently, for voting present on a bill to condemn anti-Semitism. That sent the Jewish Congresswoman flying off the handle, really hit a nerve, and then she storms out of the chamber. Take a listen.
With this anti-Semitic culture right now, she voted against a resolution condemning.
Oh, he is Jewish. I just want to be clear.
Do you want to go there, Attorney General? Or do you want to go there? Are you serious? Talking about anti-Semitism to a woman who lost her grandfather in the Holocaust? Really?
The committee will be in order.
Talk to Jared Wise about anti-Semitism.
The ranking member knows that.
Can I get like 30 seconds back?
Yeah, I've been.
Balint took
I think
30
the whole
of mine.
committee.
You know why she got so mad? Because she knew Bondi was right. She hit a nerve. And it makes sense. Balint is choosing, like so many of them do, her political party, her wacky political party, which now hates Israel and effectively chooses the Palestinians over her own heritage. And you know what? That hurts when you hear it. All right, some wise words about culture from the UK's richest man next.
You know Rob Finnerty. He's smart, bold, and stands strong for your values. Rob is fighting for you. Watch Finnerty weeknights only on Newsmax.
Where's your pain?
Right here. Both knees.
Take on the pain with CopperFit Dual Action. Hyper advanced compression sleeves powered by Lumacore. Blue infrared fibers woven into compression fabric. Increase circulation to reduce inflammation for faster recovery and pain relief.
It's more than just a compression sleeve, and it's really cool that CopperFit was the one to create it.
I'm pain-free. The swelling isn't there.
It's working for me. It's going to work for you.
Get yours at Walgreens near the pharmacy.
Every day across the globe, big business agendas go unseen by investors. Things that go against your core values and beliefs. It's time to know your investments. Abortion, alternative lifestyles, gender and identity confusion. If you believe in protecting marriage and life, children, innocence, guarding masculinity, restoring families, defending religious liberty. Invest with your values. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
At Ancestry, we believe every question about the past is a spark. And when curiosity strikes about the everyday lives of your family, we're here with answers only your ancestors can provide. How is your family woven into 250 years of U.S. history? Find out now at Ancestry.
Ready for relief?
I just want relief.
I needed relief.
You just want relief. Like you just want it to go away.
You need the Signal Relief Patch.
We all hurt, whether it's our neck, back, knees, or shoulders. Pain keeps you from doing the things that matter most. In a recent study, 85% of people felt relief.
As a surgeon, I put it on, and I can't explain why it works. I can just tell you, it does work.
Some people think this is just in my head, but I know that it works. It's working.
The Signal Relief Patch for me offered up independence.
The Signal Relief Patch for me actually means pain relief.
With a Signal Patch, I've been able to sleep, walk, and work.
Relief. That's what the Signal Patch gave me.
It was phenomenal. Why aren't more people trying this?
Join the thousands who have experienced relief, and it comes with a money-back guarantee. Get your patch today.
Hello, everyone. It's President Donald J. Trump, and it's Trump time. Check out this red beauty. It's one of my new watches. Wear it proudly on your wrist, and everyone will know exactly what it's for, who it represents. It's really going to be something special. It's for your favorite president. Get your watch today at GetTrumpWatches.com. Please make a great gift. It's Trump time.
All right, welcome back. Finally tonight, earlier this week, Megyn Kelly and Piers Morgan had it out over immigration. Kelly claiming that the UK, Piers' country, has been taken over by Islam, something that clearly has happened. And Piers Morgan writing Megyn Kelly off as crazy and exaggerating the issue of Islamic migration to his native land. Well, one of the richest guys in the UK, the co-owner of Manchester United, Jim Ratcliffe, was in an interview with Sky News recently giving the straight dope on this issue. We thought the comments were very interesting. Take a listen.
You can't have an economy with 9 million people on benefits and huge levels of immigrants coming in. I mean, the UK is being colonised. It's costing too much money. I mean, the population of the UK was 58 million in 2020. Now it's 70 million. That's 12 million people.
Interesting comments. You know, it takes guts to say something like that when you live in the UK too. Edie's joining us now in for Finnerty tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, you say something like that over there, you might have the police at your door in a few minutes.
Yeah, but you know, he's absolutely dead on. And you go most other places in Europe and you're seeing the exact same thing. They don't look the same. And you are not seeing the culture. Take France. Exactly right. You see it. You're seeing it all over. That whole continent as just self-destructing as we speak. It's just so sad. And they've welcomed it. And they asked for it. Yeah. Good to see you, Edie. All right. Thank you.